Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei turned the tables on Raynare? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. My contact in the morgue confirmed the rumors. A few nights ago an elderly couple were brutally killed on their way home. Based on evidence from the crime scene, the police seem to believe that it was done by a large carnivorous and has advised the public that a wild animal may be around. More than likely there's a new stray running around Kuo that we will have to deal with promptly. Riaz grimaced as Kiba finished his report. I see, I agree with your assessment. Kuo is a region under Gremory rule, we can't allow such a beast to wreak havoc on our human counterparts. We will locate and eliminate it within the next 3 days, I'll be working out a strategy with Akeno. Keep up the good work, Kiba. The blonde swordsman accepted his master's praise with a small nod before stepping away from her desk, leaving the Gremory clan heiress to her own thoughts. The red-deeded devil exhaled deeply as her gaze journeyed out of a nearby window and onto a view of the city. How am I to lead the Gremory clan one day when I still struggle to protect a small human city? You seem distracted, Riaz. Riaz blinked in surprise as Akeno placed a small cup of tea in front of her. She had been honestly caught off guard by her queen's sudden appearance. A small smirk emerged on her face as she spoke to her best friend. Oh? And what gives you that impression, Akeno? Akeno smiled as she spoke softly, knowing that both Kiba and Kaneko would know better than to eavesdrop on a conversation between their seniors. Other than the fact that I just surprised you? Well, you zoned out twice during Kiba's report and I'm sure he noticed as well. You don't want your loyal subjects to begin to worry about you, right? Riaz smiled as she took a small sip of her tea. Akeno always did make the best blends. You're right as always. There are quite a few things on my mind these days. Including our latest recruitment target. Riaz grimaced. Yes, especially him. Speaking of which, how is Komori doing, by the way? She's calmed down significantly since her episode last night. With your permission, I'll be asking her to stay in the underworld for the next few days to enhance her recovery process. Riaz nodded. Yes, of course. She deserves nothing less. Akeno opened her mouth to continue the conversation, but in that moment she suddenly felt something that required her utmost attention. Riaz saw the slight twitch in her queen's shoulders and also knew what was probably happening. Someone's here? Yes, the seal just registered multiple entrants. Riaz took another sip of her tea. He's more than likely brought Raynare with him. Yes, I expected that, but why did the seal report 3 signatures? Riaz blinked. 3 signatures? Knock knock knock. Riaz sighed. She wasn't looking forward to this conversation, not since what she heard from Komori last night. Kaneko, could you get the door please? Our guests are here. Yes, President. Just as the white-haired loli fulfilled her master's request, the entire room was greeted by the smiling face of Issei Hyoudou. Hey shorty. Hello stupid perv. Issei pouted. Hey, I'm not that stupid. A familiar female voice behind Issei spoke. The jury is still out on that one. Hello Ria-senpai, Akeno-senpai and pretty boy. Riaz and Akeno returned the greeting with a polite one of their own, while Kiba groaned. Must you call me that? You do realize that some of the girls on campus have mini orgasms when you talk to them, right? Besides, rumor has it that when you smile your face begins to sparkle. Sounds like the normal pretty boy routine to me. If only you used your powers for good. Kiba shook his head as Issei walked into the club room, allowing those behind him to come in as well. I think this is as good a time as any for proper introductions. You all know Raynare, the Grigori agent that has been assigned as my attendant and guardian by Azazel himself. She likes cake and she tried to kill me on our first date after eating through my allowance. Raynare blushed as she narrowed her eyes at Issei. Why do you keep mentioning that? Issei decided to pay her no mind as he pointed his thumb at the eagle-sized dragon that was perched on Raynare's right shoulder. This is Drag, the legendary red dragon emperor who now serves as my sacred gear and partner. I'm sure you've all heard stories of how powerful he is and how he is feared by all of the factions. This is indeed him, just shorter. He likes cake as well. Drag took that moment to leave his impression on the room. Hello children. Each and every member of the Occult Research Club could feel the absurd amount of power that had just punctuated Drag's simple greeting. This was no joke or illusion. This was the Welsh dragon, and they were just as good as insects in his sight. A moment passed before Issei spoke again. Enough of the showboating, Drag. We're not just here for fun. The dragon nodded as his overwhelming presence slowly but surely dissipated into thin air. As you wish, partner. Thank you. Now. Issei was no longer smiling as he took a seat on a couch in the middle of the room. We've got some things we need to discuss, Riaz. Fried Selzen considered himself to be a simple man. His main self-given purpose for existing was to get stronger, kill strong monsters and fuck desirable bitches. Surely that wasn't too much to ask for from this droll experience called life. But it seemed that wherever he went there was always someone standing in his way, preventing him from doing the things he really wanted to. First it was one of his instructors in the institute that had demanded that he learn to control his violent tendencies or he wouldn't be allowed into the field to hunt devils. He accidentally killed the instructor in a spar a few weeks later. Then it was that female police officer that tried to arrest him for touching high school girls on the public train. He made sure to give her a good time before ending her life. And now it was some idiotic mediocre middleman that had been given one teeny tiny job. One simple fucking job. Freed bit down on his lip hard, his irritation making itself quite obvious. Say that again. The person that he was speaking to was an ordinary human that had been hired to meet with Asia Argento upon her arrival in Kuo and to keep her hidden until Freed could come get her. The man seemed to be a little embarrassed. Somehow we got the flight numbers mixed up. When I got to the airport to pick her up, the girl's flight had already come in from yesterday evening. But don't worry, I'm sure she's in the city somewhere. We'll definitely find her. Freed inhaled sharply. That won't be necessary. Your services will no longer be required. Good help is so hard to find these days. Get out of my sight, you useless piece of trash. The man stepped forward. Hey man, I was promised a healthy sum if I got her to you, and I'm not leaving my payday behind. You got a problem with that? The man emphasized his statement by pulling a knife out of his waist. Freed laughed. Not just an ordinary chuckle or a small giggle or snicker. But full-blown laughter. The man himself eyed Freed warily. Hey, you sick in the head or something? Freed's laughter continued for a full 30 seconds before he began to calm down. No, I'm not crazy, well just maybe a little, but that's beyond the point. Here's a free life lesson from your good old friendly neighborhood priest, Father Selzen. The man had blinked. Just blinked. And in the milliseconds it would take for him to open his eyes again, Freed had easily separated his head from his body with a flick of the wrist. The sword in the ex-priest's hand was tinted red with the man's blood. Never bring a fucking knife to a magic sword fight, bitch. After spitting on the man's corpse and sheathing his sword, Freed slowly made his way out of their meeting place, a deserted alleyway on the outskirts of Kuo. I'll have to just make contact with those fallen angels and see if we can find this nun on our own. For all of the fucking trouble she's putting me through, she better be hot. And that's just who Freed Selzen was. A raging psychotic perverted murderer. In his own eyes a simple man. Riaz nodded at Issei's words. You're right. Let's get down to business. Will Raynare-chan and Drake-sama be joining us? Issei nodded. Of course. Raynare took that as her cue to take a seat beside Issei, as Drake chose to lazily curl himself on top of one of the couch's armrest. Akeno stepped forward with a serving tray as the three got comfortable. May I get you anything? Water, tea, biscuits? Raynare answered first. I'm fine. Drake grunted. No. Issei nodded. Some tea would be nice, thank you. As Akeno left to prepare the tea, Riaz took her chance to begin the discussion. So you've recently become aware of the fact that we've been keeping tabs on you, yes? Issei shook his head. I've been aware ever since you guys started keeping track of my activities within the city. I just never had a reason to be bothered until last night. Tiba commented. You expect us to believe that? Issei nodded. Yup. Shorty follows me around Mondays and Wednesdays, Pretty Boy does Thursdays and Fridays, and Akeno-senpai does Tuesdays, Saturdays and Sundays. I suspect that you weren't available last night and that's why Riaz was forced to send that bat demon, Komori. There was a common silence among the members of the ORC, Occult Research Club. It was impossible for Issei to have correctly guessed their observation schedules. Raynare wasn't surprised in the slightest, she was actually trained to be a spy and the only time she could ever sneak up on Issei was when he was watching porn and that was something no one should ever do. Riaz decided to speak again. We stand corrected. You did know. So why act out now and traumatize my familiar? Issei winced. Sorry about that, I was in a foul mood when I discovered that she was trying to peek into my home, I may have overreacted a little. But she'll be fine, she just needs a few days of rest. I hope she mentioned that I didn't attack her. She did, but I'm pressed to believe that you simply scared her that much. Issei's left eyebrow slowly rose. You do know that I have a terribly powerful dragon living inside my body, right? The one that literally startled all of you with just 2 words. Riaz frowned. I see your point, well somehow during her hysteria, Komori managed to say that you would be coming to speak with us today personally. What is that you wanted to say? As I said before, I don't mind you guys watching me. If I was in your position, I would keep surveillance on me too. I'm a powerful sacred gear user that has not necessarily picked a side yet. I live in a city that generally falls under your care, so I believe your actions are reasonable. I'm here to firstly make a request that will explain why I reacted in this manner to Komori's actions. Ria's narrowed her eyes. A request. Issei nodded. Yup. There's something I'd like for you to understand. My parents, Goru and Hinata Hyoudou, are ordinary humans. My father's a salary man who works unbelievable hours so that we can eat good food. My mother is a full-time housewife that keeps all of our affairs in order, she even volunteers at the hospital from time to time. They aren't perfect but they are good people and they have been good to me. They are mine. Which means they are under my protection. Neither you nor your clan will attempt to spy on them, manipulate them, coerce them or any other activity of a similar nature. The both of them and the house that they built through hard work are off limits unless I say otherwise. I'm asking you to respect that and leave them out of this completely. Rias pondered Issei's words for a moment before replying. It was never our intention to involve either of your parents, Issei. What happened last night was only because Komori wished to continue her surveillance on you. You have my word that no servant or representative of the Grimoire clan will disrespect or violate your request. Issei took a deep breath. Thank you for understanding. As I said before, once I'm outside of my home, watch, follow and stalk me to your heart's content. Rias offered a confident smile. Are you saying you have nothing to hide? Issei shook his head. I'm saying that if you want to know my secrets, you'll have to do far better than what you're doing right now. The answer was sharp enough to draw a speculative frown from Kaneko and Kiba. Rias was well aware that both her rook and her knight were proud of being members of her peerage and of the skills they possessed. They didn't normally take kindly to those who brought insult to either. Excuse me? The familiar voice of Akeno sliced through the room's building tension with ease, along with the delightful scents that were emanating from her lunch tray. Refreshments are now available. Rias offered a genuine smile to her best friend, whether the timing of her arrival was planned or pure coincidence, it offered a great opportunity. Thank you, Akeno. The black-haired devil returned the smile as if she knew exactly what Rias had been thinking about. It is always my pleasure to serve, Madam President. Issei smiled politely as Akeno handed him his cup. It's been a long time since I've had some vanilla Kai tea, smells like you blended in the right amount of ginger root too. Akeno was naturally fascinated. I don't often come across young teenage males that know different tea blends so intimately. I'm rather impressed to say. Issei chuckled as he took a few sips. Everyone has to have a hobby or two. I will admit that I'm not as well informed and practiced as I used to be. Even so, to recognize it just by the aroma still speaks high volumes about your skills and knowledge. I appreciate your praise. Raynare watched the interaction between Akeno and Issei closely. Irakiel's daughter is quite the hostess. She's managed to even calm Issei down a bit with just a little dialogue. A girl like her would have done so well with the Grigori. Rias allowed herself a few moments to enjoy the refreshments as well before speaking again. May we continue, Issei? The brown-haired teenager nodded. Ah, yes of course. There is something else I would like to discuss. I have a proposition for you. Rias leaned forward, allowing her elbows to rest on her desk. A proposition? Yes. Over the past few months, I've noticed that our city has been experiencing wave after wave of attack and provocation from the mystical world. From rogue Grigori agents to excommunicated exorcists to stray devils and monsters with hidden agendas. I think it's all a little too coordinated to be pure coincidence. Rias nodded. My brother IsseiXHarem came to the same conclusion a few days ago. It seems the Kuo has become a target for quite a few groups. Issei responded. And even though we may not be sure of the motive or motives of those responsible, we are well aware of their intention to disrupt any semblance of peace that our city has, whether by attacking you, the other devil clans represented here are Kuo's human citizens. Rias grimaced. Yes. It does seem as if we are all being targeted, but Kuo is my responsibility and I intend to use whatever resources that are at my disposal to keep it safe. Issei smiled cheekily. And what if those are not enough? From what I've seen, you're reluctant to ask for too much help from your clan and especially from your brother. Rias didn't answer. She had been asking herself that question for a long time now and she hadn't managed to answer herself yet, so she doubted she could answer Issei. The sacred gear user continued. A wise man once told me that there are 3 persons a great ruler will always need in their life. An astute negotiator, an honest friend and a ruthless executioner. If he's short on any of the 3, he is destined to fail. Ria's curiosity piqued. What are you implying? Issei took a deep breath before speaking. I'd like to be your executioner. There were varying reactions from each person in the room, but no one was willing to verbalize a response just yet. Issei could feel Raynare's questioning gaze burning tracks at the side of his skull. This was the part of today's plan he had not discussed with the fallen angel, and for good reason, he knew she would certainly attempt to dissuade him. Ria smiled sweetly, like the cat that had managed to finally corner the canary that she had been dying to have. Are you saying that you wish to join my peerage? The cat pounced. And the canary shot her in the face. Nope. The entire room went silent again as Ria's jaw almost crashed into the floor. What kind of games are you playing, Issei Hyoudou? You just said that you wish to serve me, but you refuse to become a member of my peerage. Issei sighed. I'm not trying to play any games here. Allow me to repeat myself, I wish to be your executioner, not a member of your peerage, which would without a doubt require me to become a devil. Ria sat back down. Explain. I'm offering my strength to you. Kuo is my home, my family and friends live here, and I want to keep it safe. I'm sure with our combined resources, we will be able to eliminate those who would wish to harm the city in an attempt to destroy or discredit the Gremory clan. I already have a peerage for that, and they are. Issei interjected. Young, inexperienced and not strong enough. Hiba scowled at Issei as he spoke. Are you calling us weak? Issei smirked. No. You're just not strong enough. Ria-senpai needs more than a trusted peerage right now. I'm sure in time, with the right training and guidance, each of you will be a powerhouse. But as it stands, none of you are quite there yet, and I assure you that your enemies will not wait for you to get stronger. I do not intend to replace you, I intend to fight alongside you. Hiba countered. And what makes you think that you're vastly superior to us? Because you have a sacred gear? Issei remained silent for a few extra seconds before standing up. I see your point, pretty boy. Perhaps a demonstration is required. Issei stretched his limbs as he spoke. The room may be a little small, but I'm sure this will be fine. I'm going to attempt to get to Ria's, and you guys should try to stop me. Kaneko blinked. What? Issei explained again. I'm going to attempt to get to Ria-senpai once, neither Raynare nor Drake will be helping. If any of you, which includes you as well, Akeno-senpai, manage to touch or stop me before I get to her, I'll leave. You may use your weapons and magic. Hiba pulled out his sword. Sounds ideal to me. Kaneko also stood from her chair, getting into one of her fighting stances. Akeno stepped away from her lunch tray hesitantly. Are you sure about this? We may hurt you. Issei nodded. If you do, then my proposition is of no value to your master. Ria slowly leaned back in her chair. Please do your best to not cause any permanent damage to the room. Issei smirked. And please stay away from the lunch tray, I really like the tea. All three members of Ria's peerage surrounded Issei in a mid-range triangle formation. The encircled teenager smiled at Ria's. Would you mind counting us off, Ria's? We move at 3. The red-haired heiress nodded. Very well. 1. Hiba tightened his grip on his katana while Kaneko narrowed her eyes. 2. Small sparks of lightning magic sparkled in between Akeno's fingers. Issei. Issei was stroking his chin with the weirdest smile on his face. 3. Whoosh. Issei was still standing in the very same spot, but now there was a katana at his neck, a fist nestled against his gut and a handful of lightning magic aimed at the back of his head. Akeno spoke. It seems you overestimated yourself, Issei. Both Kiba and Kaneko smirked confidently. Greg would be the one to correct them. You should look at your president before deciding that, boy. All three members of Ria's peerage spun with surprise as they faced their leader. Kiba expressed his disbelief. President. Ria stood up from her chair and pointed at her corset. Raynare's eyes widened. Ria's corset was open, the buttons were gone. Issei yawned as he retook his seat. Each of you, including Ria-senpai, will find a button in your top pocket. Forgive me for my actions, Ria-senpai, I will cover the fee for fixing your corset. Ria shook her head as she reclaimed her seat. There is no need. I must admit I didn't even see you move, Issei. Is that some sort of time manipulation magic? Issei grinned. My secrets are my secrets. Ria sighed. I see, well, you've certainly proved yourself. Indeed. I won't lie though, you guys are far better than I thought. Let me also add that I'm willing to offer training regimes, tips and advice for the members of your peerage if they so desire. Ria's nodded. This all sounds like a very good proposal, Issei, but I still have a few questions. My main one being, what do you want in return for your services? I know you aren't doing this for free. Issei was scratching his chin again. How very wise of you to ask, Ria-senpai. Tell me, would it be inappropriate if I asked for a few pictures of you in magical girl Coco cosplay? Slap. A rather irate Raynare delivered a slap to the back of Issei's head. Is it too much to ask you to be serious in moments like this? Ria smirked. Oh, he wasn't serious. I was actually about to agree. I do own some of her more risque outfits. Raynare narrowed her eyes. Azazel-sama always did say the devil women were the freakiest. Issei groaned as he rubbed the back of his head. Well, since I have to be serious. My demands aren't all that steep. A small stipend, we could always discuss the amount later, a few small favors here and there. But most importantly, I'd like access to the renowned Gremory clan library. Ria's paused for a moment. Our library? What exactly would you want in our? My secrets are my secrets. Right, even though I am the clan heiress, you should know that there are several parts of the library that you won't have access to unless you are a member of my peerage or of direct relation to my family. Issei nodded. That's fine. I'm sure I'll find what I need, or at least some clues in whatever is made available to me. Ria sighed. I see, I'll have to discuss some of your conditions with the clan elders and get back to you. Issei smiled as he stood up to leave, his compatriots following his example. Of course, take some time and think it over. Please do excuse us from your company, tonight's family dinner night at my house, and we don't want to be late. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a good weekend. Later that night, Raynare approached the front door of the Hyoudou family residence with several unanswered questions on her mind. Questions that revolved around the motives, plans and actions of Issei Hyoudou. She wasn't surprised by the fact that Issei had taken great offense to the actions of Ria's familiar. For as long as Issei possessed the boosted gear Longinus, he would continue to exhibit character traits of a dragon, and one of the first things she learned was that dragons were very territorial beings. She'd have to keep an eye on him for the next few weeks to see just how great of an influence Drag was having on him. It wasn't rare to hear of a person being driven insane or becoming overcome with rage by the raw power of their sacred gear. If such was going to be the case, the Grigori would have to activate the necessary countermeasures. The frown slowly etched itself on the fallen angel's face as she recalled Issei offering himself as a weapon to Ria's and her clan. I'd like to be your executioner. But why? Why would Issei choose to ally himself with the devils? Did he not understand how dangerous and underhanded they were? Did he think that the Grimoire clan could deliver on their promises better than the Grigori could? What information could they possess that wouldn't already be at Azazel Sama's fingertips? What could that red-headed woman offer to him that she couldn't? Raynare blinked. What? Where in the hottest hells did that last question come from? Raynare shook her head. She needed to focus. It had been a very long week and she would be starting school with Issei on the coming Monday. She didn't need any distractions or stray thoughts. She just needed to get through this family dinner without any further complications. Just as she was about to knock, the door swung open to reveal a slightly agitated Issei. Raynare furrowed her eyebrows. Issei, is there something wrong? I'm not too sure myself. I'd be grateful for a second opinion. Raynare entered and watched as Issei closed the door behind her, a very worrying thought crossed her mind. Wait. No. Did something happen to the strawberry shortcake? Issei rolled his eyes. Could you not think about food for 1 second? Raynare blushed. Sorry. Right, you remember when I told you that my mom sometimes volunteers at the hospital? Raynare nodded. Well, she met 2 people at the hospital today, a person who seems to be suffering from amnesia and a young lady who found her in the street and brought her in. Okay. Well, the fees for the checkup were more than they could handle, so my mother paid it for them and then invited them to dinner tonight. Why is that so much of a problem? We normally have lots of leftovers. Issei sighed as he led Raynare into the living room. That's not what concerns me. Raynare was about to ask the all-important question about why it was such a concern, but then she was greeted by a sight that answered the question for her. Sitting in the living room, enjoying a drink of orange juice with Goro and Hinata Hyoudou, was none other than Issei Argento herself, the nun that had been specially brought to Kuo for the sole purpose of stealing her sacred gear. A process that would more than likely kill her. She was here in Issei's living room. Fuck. Before Raynare could even attempt to form words into a statement, Hinata began the introductions. Hello Yuma-chan, this is Issei Argento. A nun that came all the way from Italy to serve in Kuo's Christian church. Issei, this is Issei's girlfriend, Amano Yuma. Issei's face reflected disappointment for just a moment. Oh, Issei-kun. Has a girlfriend. Ah, hello. It's very nice to meet you, Yuma-chan. Raynare smiled nervously. Likewise, Issei. Slow, careful footsteps could be heard as someone descended the staircase that led into the living room. Hinata smiled brightly. Oh, and this is Issei's friend Esther. She's recovering from a small episode of amnesia, so she's a little shy. Would you like to say hello to Issei's girlfriend? Hello, my name is Esther. Well, that's the name Issei-chan picked for me. I can't remember my real name. It's nice to meet you. Wait. Why did that voice sound so familiar? Raynare's eyes became flying saucers as she turned to greet Esther. Dressed in a very long dark blue frock and grey jacket was none other than the recently missing Kalawiner. The bashful, headstrong fallen angel now looked so fragile and innocent that even a mouse would probably scare her to death. You've got to be kidding me. Doing the dishes. It was in all truth a simple household chore. However, it was an activity that not many people looked forward to doing. In fact, if there was ever a competition for the most hated household chore, do you know who the winner would without a doubt be? Yup. You guessed it. Doing the dishes. There was still a bit of mystery as to why so many people hated the tedious yet important job. Was it because removing the remnants of previous meals from pots, pans and dishes was in itself kinda disgusting? Or because some families used up a lot of kitchenware from day to day and the task could take up valuable time, especially if you didn't own a dishwasher? Maybe it was hated due to how mind-numbingly boring it could be. Whatever the reason and logical conclusion that could be drawn, the fact remained that the task was abhorred by a majority of Earth's inhabitants. But we aren't focusing on them right now. We're focusing on Issei Hyoudou, and despite all that's been said in the previous statements leading up to this one, there is also one other precious fact that still also remains at the forefront. Issei Hyoudou actually liked washing the dishes. It didn't matter if there were a lot of dishes or the time of day that it had to be done, once Issei had the opportunity he would take his time to slowly clean each and every utensil that had been discarded into the sink. Issei himself found the task to be a little therapeutic. Being personally involved in a process that allowed him to purify objects until they were clean, fresh and fit for usage gave him a real sense of accomplishment. He really didn't know why he got such satisfaction from doing it, but he knew it was one of the few activities that helped to take the edge off. The brown-haired young man happily hummed to himself as he inspected a recently washed knife set. Issei. A pause. The holder of the Welsh dragon Longinus took a deep breath and did his best to prevent his shoulders from tensing up. He didn't verbally respond, but his change of posture should have been enough to alert Raynare to the fact that he was listening to her every word. The fallen angel continued. I don't think Kalwarner's faking it. Raynare tried her best not to flinch as Issei slowly turned around. His face didn't relay any hint of anger or disbelief, but his voice conveyed a small amount of worry. The atmosphere felt just a tad bit heavier. You've been chatting with her for almost an hour, and that's all you have? I guess. What kind of spy are you? Despite the chill that ran down her back, Raynare still found the bravado to roll her eyes. A very thorough one. I've spent the last hour using every Grigori passcode, call sign and hand signal that Kalwarner would know. She didn't react at all, she just kept talking. Issei blinked. So? There are certain phrases and gestures that every Grigori agent has to acknowledge, no matter how deep their undercover assignment is. It was a system started by the High Council to prevent certain levels of espionage and to warn fellow agents if they were in danger. For Kalwarner to ignore them implies that she really doesn't have any idea of what they mean. Issei frowned before replying. Or she no longer has any allegiance to the Grigori and has no reason to acknowledge your signals. Raynare shook her head. Kalwarner would sooner commit suicide than betray us. Issei studied Raynare's face carefully. It wasn't often that the raven-haired female spoke with such conviction. Another second passed before he simply shrugged. I suppose I'll have to take your word for it unless proven otherwise. I didn't even know that angels could get amnesia. Raynare folded her arms. Heavenly angels can't. Those who have fallen from the righteous path lose some of the powers and protections that are being offered by God. One of these protections was the inability to contract or suffer from afflictions. Issei took a moment to process Raynare's response before nodding. I see, that kinda makes sense. A very obvious twitch could be seen over Raynare's right eye as Issei turned his back to her and continued to enjoy his therapeutic activities. A few seconds passed in silence before the raven-haired woman opened her mouth and attempted to speak. Issei swiftly cut her off with instructions. Quiet. I'm trying to think. Raynare was about to defend herself by saying she hadn't actually said anything yet, but decided she was better off staying quiet and starting an argument. What are the chances that Cauliflower will recover from her amnesia on her own? Raynare rolled her eyes. Her name is Kalwarner, and I'd say that the chances are quite low based on previous cases. Human treatments won't work, but there are spells and potions that can undo the effects of the ailment, but that would require a specialist healer or an expert chemist. It would take me a few days to get either of them into Kuo. Bet to work on it then. Knowing my mother, she'll probably allow California, insert Raynare eye roll here, and the nun to stay here until she recovers or finds family and friends in Kuo that can take care of her, and I'm certainly not comfortable with her here. The nun would probably be better off not hanging around a member of the fallen too. No offense, Rare-chan. None taken. Is there anything else you need me to do? Yes. Continue to keep an eye on Kaleidoscope. Kalwarner. Her name is Kalwarner. Kaleidoscope for now. If she makes a wrong move, incapacitate her. Be wary of the nun as well. I doubt she knows the fullness of what's really going on, but better safe than sorry. Raynare decided to not bother to correct Issei anymore as she nodded. Okay, I'll do that. I hear your mother coming. Yay. I'll take care of her, you go keep an eye on them. Raynare was about to excuse herself when Issei spoke again. Oh, and Rare-chan. Cold. Ice cold. The air was cold. The floor was cold. She was cold. Her blood felt like it was becoming hoarfrost. Raynare stood completely still. This was not Issei's wrath or anger. This was his anxiety. The brown-haired male was still washing the dishes, but his voice reminded her of an ancient monarch who was commonly addressing an ordinary peasant. I want to trust you, Raynare. I really do. However, I need you to understand this. If I believe your colleague is here to harm my family, I will end her without hesitation and all those who are involved. Understand? Raynare could barely whisper the word yes. Life, warmth, sound, taste and sight suddenly became a reality again as the beautiful Grigori agent stumbled forward. Her breaths came out ragged as she steadied herself. Issei's voice no longer held power or sway, it was once again the light squeak of a hormonal teenager. Deep breaths, take a lot of deep breaths. Raynare followed his advice, barely managing to stand up straight again just in time for Mrs. Hyoudou to enter the kitchen. Forgive me for interrupting your little chat, lovebirds, but could I Uma-chan? Are you alright? You look ill. Raynare offered a small smile as she slowly felt her strength returning. I'm fine. I may have just eaten a little too much dessert, that's all. Issei's mother nodded as she rubbed Raynare's back. Ah yes, that's the disadvantage of Issei's brilliant chef skills. The stomach aches and the weight gains. Perhaps I should get something from the medicine cabinet for you? No, I'm sure I'll be fine. I'm going to just freshen up in the restroom. Hinata smiled. Of course, dear. I'll keep my son company until you're ready for him again. Raynare quickly excused herself as Hinata addressed her son. She's such a nice girl, I wonder what she sees in a pervert like you. Issei offered his mother a very wide grin. I have magic fingers. In the kitchen. Yes. I doubt a virgin like you would know the first thing about pleasing a beautiful girl like her. Besides, I'm not ready for grandkids yet. Issei instantly deflated. That's cold, mom. Hinata smiled as she patted her son on the head. Issei could have sworn that he heard Drake chuckling in the dark recesses of his mind. Honesty isn't always comforting, dear. By the way, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory. Forever and ever. Amen. The tall feminine figure was kneeling in the backyard garden of the Hyoudou household. She was covered in a very large dark blue shawl that kept her identity concealed, her gaze turned upward to a sky decorated by a myriad of stars and constellations. An aura of tranquility permeated the garden and had allowed even her cluttered and confused mind to have a few moments of peace and solitude. It seemed the solitude was not meant to last very long. Was that the Lord's Prayer? To her credit, the feminine figure only jumped slightly as she turned to the source of the voice. Did I wake you, Issei-san? The brown-haired figure of Issei Hyoudou slowly emerged from a nearby shadow, a dark brown coat hanging loosely from his shoulders. Not at all, Esther. I normally come out here on nights that I can't sleep. I didn't know you'd be out here though, my apologies if I disturbed your prayers. It was a lie. He had been watching Raynare all night, he had observed her every move and had followed her when she had excused herself out of the guest room that she had been sharing with Asia. In all honesty, he had expected to catch her doing something that would incriminate her and validate how fraudulent her claims really were. He had not expected to find her praying. Raynare nodded slowly as she stood, her cheeks having a slightly rosy tinge. Oh no. It's quite alright. I was just about finished anyways. Please don't stay out in the cold for too long, Issei-san. You might just get sick. You're right. Don't worry. I won't be out here much longer. Esther pulled back her shawl, revealing the dark blue hair that perfectly matched the color of her accessory. A small smile gracing her face as she walked toward Issei. I see. I believe I'll be going to bed as well. Good night. Good night. Raynare took 4 evenly placed steps before stopping. Issei eyed her warily. Can I ask you a question, Issei-san? Sure. The fallen angel turned around so that they could face each other, her features were portraying a mixture of innocence and natural curiosity. Do you believe that God answers prayer? Issei narrowed his eyes by the slightest margin, he had not been expecting this type of question. I don't consider myself an expert in religious or godly matters, but I do believe that if you are sincere and your heart is in the right place, he will answer. A small sad smile carved its way onto Raynare's face. I see. Thank you. She turned to leave, but Issei's curiosity had now gotten the better of him. Why do you ask, Esther? The blue-haired beauty turned her focus skyward as she answered. Asia-chan is a firm believer in God and the power of prayer. She's always praying, always thanking him. She says that it's God that brought us together and it's her God-given mission to help me recover. Issei noted Raynare's facial expressions with great interest. You seem to disagree. Raynare quickly shook her head as she waved her hands about frantically. Oh no. It's not that I disagree or anything, it's just I've been praying that I no longer be a burden to Asia-chan. A burden? Raynare nodded. Yes. Ever since she found me in that alley, Asia-chan has been spending the little money she has on things for me. Clothes, food and everything else. She has been so incredibly kind to me and I have no way to repay her. That's why I want to get well quickly, I know she doesn't have much left. If your mother had not paid for my hospital visit, we would be in debt and flat broke. Does Asia feel the same way? Halloranor sighed. She says this is a test of faith for the both of us. She honestly believes that God has everything under control, and even us meeting your family is a small part of his providence. Issei smirked. Well, maybe that's what you need more of. Faith. It seems to be doing wonders for Asia. Halloranor bit her lip as she looked down at her feet. Issei couldn't help but compare this woman to the fallen angel he had encountered some days ago, how their personalities differed so drastically. It's kinda hard to have faith in a god that won't even help me remember my name. The only way this would make sense was if Asia-chan is in fact my guardian angel. Issei almost snorted at the irony of the statement. Even if she isn't your guardian angel, I think it's pretty safe to assume that Asia Herc. Halloranor's eyes widened in shock as Issei stumbled forward. The blue-haired woman quickly grabbed hold of the young man's shoulders as he began to cough violently. Issei-san. No. Cough, not now. Cough. While Issei tried to converse with Halloranor, another round of dialogue was happening in his mind. Reg. Hold on, partner. This one caught me by surprise. I'm trying to suppress your power as we speak. This must be the feedback from you using it so often in the last few days. Halloranor used a little strength she had to guide Issei to the small bench in the middle of the backyard. Issei grunted in pain as he sat down. Issei-san, I'm going to get your mother and… No. What? Why? I'll be fine, please just don't cough. Halloranor was not convinced as she took note of the radical change of Issei's countenance. His skin was now pale and sweaty, his eyes were shut tight, as if he was trying to focus on something important. Halloranor opened her mouth to speak, to say anything, but she was rendered mute by the fact that Issei was now slowly beginning to glow red. Since when did people glow red? Esther-chan. Issei-kun. A pajama-wearing Asia sprinted past Esther and knelt down before Issei, her hands glowing green. Halloranor's eyes grew even wider. Asia's hands could glow too. Was this normal? Was this something she had somehow forgotten? Asia tried to calm Issei down as she planted her hands on his chest. Please remain still, Issei-kun, I'm going to heal you. There was a brief pause as the quiet hum of Asia's power grew louder and louder. Halloranor simply stood transfixed by the sight before her. A few moments passed before Issei's coughing came to an end. Well, isn't it a neat trick? Asia sighed in relief as she cancelled her technique and slowly stood up. Are you feeling better, Issei-kun? Issei took a few deep breaths. Halloranor noticed that his red aura was no longer present. Somewhat those powers. It's definitely a sacred gear, right? Asia nodded, still paying keen attention to Issei's physical appearance. He looked better but nothing close to perfect. Asia looked down at her hands as if her sacred gear was suddenly defective. I'll try again. This has never happened before, my abilities normally heal an ordinary sickness in one go. Issei tiredly lifted a hand in opposition. You've done enough, Asia, my illness isn't anything ordinary. I will be alright. Asia didn't look too convinced, but Issei had already shifted his gaze to the silent Halloranor. The female fallen angel cautiously stepped back from the pair of Asia and Issei. What are you guys? Issei grunted as he felt his muscles relaxing. We are humans with special devices known as sacred gears that have granted us special abilities. The power to heal seems to be Asia's gift. Halloranor quickly shifted her attention to the blonde nun. You can heal? Asia nodded. Halloranor's eyes narrowed in anger as thoughts of betrayal sparked across her mind. So why haven't you tried healing me? Am I not good enough? Asia quickly stepped forward. Don't even think that way, Esther. I healed you the moment I found you in that alley, broken, bruised and at death's door. I didn't even stop until I was completely out of power. I swear. The anger in Halloranor's eyes melted away into confusion. So why do I still have amnesia? My powers don't work like that, they heal physical wounds and illnesses. It can't help your amnesia, but that's why we're going back to the hospital tomorrow, so they can help with your treatment. Save yourself the time. It won't work. Both Asia and Halloranor turned their attention back to Issei. He was still sitting on the bench, but he looked far healthier and relaxed than in the moments prior to Asia healing him. A knowing smile was plastered on his face. Halloranor didn't like it. What do you mean, why won't it work? Because human treatments only work on human patients. Asia's mouth remained agape in sheer shock as Halloranor slowly worked out the implications. I'm not human. No. You're what we call a fallen angel. Asia looked back at Halloranor in astonishment. Esther is one of the fallen. Yay, I believe her real name is Halloranor. A moment passed before Halloranor began to giggle. Halloranor, what kind of stupid made-up name is that? It's almost as bad as Esther. Asia gasped in disbelief. Esther is a wonderful name. She's a queen who served God. She even has a book in the Bible named after her. And it would have been a fitting name if we were living in the 1800s. I appreciate you wholeheartedly, Asia, but there's no way I'm keeping that name once I get my memories back. Asia pouted and folded her arms. Hyoudou isn't that much better. I don't remember anyone with that name from the Bible. Hyoudou chuckled as she pat Asia on the head. Issei spoke again. You seem to be taking the news that you're not human fairly well. Hyoudou sighed. I always knew there was something off about me. The doctors back at the hospital couldn't take a blood sample because the needles couldn't pierce my skin. They thought it was a rare skin disease, but I didn't feel sick, I felt strong. Fallen angel is a bit of a stretch though. I was hoping I'd be a superhero or something. Asia giggled at the statement before turning to Issei. Issei-kun, how did you know that she was a fallen angel? Have you two met before, or is that the power of your sacred gear? Issei slowly got up and walked past the two girls. This night had been way too long, he needed to get some sleep. I only encountered Hyoudou once. Hyoudou and Asia glanced at each other, trying to decipher as to why Issei's sentence lacked much detail. Just as the brown-haired young man was about to disappear into the darkness of the house, he spoke again. She tried to kill me, but I didn't feel like dying that night, so I politely blasted her across Kuo in the hopes that she would come to her senses. She lost her memory instead. Sorry, my bad. Good night, you two. The next day. Raynare did not expect to get any visitors at the small comfortable apartment that she had rented during her first few months in Kuo. Mostly because she never told anyone about it. Not her supervisors. Not her colleagues. Not even her acquaintances. It was meant to be her own private spot. A place where she could get away from the stresses of life and unwind a bit without staying too far from where her mission required her to be. The morning had started just like any other morning. Shower. Get dressed. Make breakfast. Think about how annoying Issei would be for the rest of the day and cursing God for allowing him to be so strong. You know, the regular stuff. Unfortunately, Raynare was not allowed to follow that routine on this faithful morning. As the raven-haired beauty stepped into the small kitchen to get breakfast ready, she noticed a half mug of very warm coffee on the kitchen counter. A millisecond that stretched on for a millennia passed in silence. And then came the movement. Raynare was one fluid, graceful motion as she spun on her heel. A crimson lance of light already swirling in her hands as she attempted to cause harm to the presence behind her. Keyword. Attempted. Her beautifully orchestrated attack was foiled by one massive hand clamping down on her wrist. A firm yet gentle voice brought identity to the intruder. Stand down, Raynare. You might actually destroy the building and attract unwanted attention. Raynare's eyes widened as she powered down the spear of light. Issei-sama. The vice commander of the Grigori nodded as he released Raynare's wrist and stepped back. The trademark serious expression that he was famous for remained firm, despite the fact that one of his underlings had tried to kill him. Forgive me for entering your premises unannounced, but I could not return to the underworld without sharing some intel that Azazel wishes for you to know. Raynare nodded slowly as she tried to calm her nerves. After the Grabalek incident, a team was dispatched to this region to ensure that no other unaccounted for fallen angels were in this area. The team believed that there was another group of wayward Grigori agents stationed in Kuo's abandoned Christian church. Raynare tried her best to not have a physical reaction. They found out about Donasik and the others. Issei continued. Unfortunately, when I got here this morning, the group had managed to abandon their base of operations and escape. We're not sure of who they are, what they're up to, and where their allegiances lie, but we can't afford another mishap between us and the Devil Society. It would cause trouble. Raynare nodded again. Playing the part of the good soldier was practically second nature at this point. Yes sir, I agree. What can I do to help? You are not to divert time or energy from your original mission, but the High Council requests that you keep an ear to the ground and report anything that can help. You are one of the few agents we have on the ground that is so well acquainted with the area. Raynare mentally sighed as she responded. Understood. I'll do what I can, sir. B. Issei nodded as he turned to leave. By the way, Raynare. Sir? I'm going to assume that this apartment is not on your file because you forgot to report it to the records department. Please correct that whenever you return. You will be reimbursed for the coffee I drank while I was here. Goodbye. Raynare nodded weakly as the vice commander closed her door behind him. She had no idea where the group would go now that they were discovered. She'd just have to hope that they'd lay low for a while before making any more moves. A thought crossed her mind as she nervously poured herself her own cup of coffee. Hyoudou would know though. I have to get that chemist here soon, I have a bad feeling about this. Later that night. Riaz carefully observed the abandoned house in front of with great interest. Her peerage stood behind her, anxiously anticipating the coming battle. The red-headed devil glanced at her knight. This is the place, Kiba. Kiba nodded. The stray has been luring people into that building and has been eating them. Kaneko unknowingly voiced her master's concern. I can't sense any demonic aura from in there. Akeno responded. It could have learnt the ability to mask its presence. Rias concluded the argument. Which means it's more dangerous than we thought. Stick to the plan. We move together. When we find it, we distract it, weaken it and then destroy it. Stay in formation. Understood. 3 silent nods were the replies to Ria's question. A small confident smile graced her face as she turned her attention back to the abandoned house. This was not going to be like their last fight. She had spent too much time strategizing and the planning for that to happen. They were going to win. Flash. Ag. A bright golden light flashed in the house that quickly followed by a small shockwave that almost sent Rias and her peerage tumbling to the ground. The cry of pain that they heard was probably that of their target, the stray devil. Kiba pulled out his katana out of the sheath as he looked around for possible enemies. What was that? Akeno's eyebrows were furrowed as lightning started to crackle around her fingertips. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's very powerful. Rias nodded. Yes, and very ancient. There were a few moments of silence as the Grimoire peerage watched the front door of the house for any sign of the stray demon or the source of that highly concentrated magical power. Click. The front door was opening. Rias stood a little in front of her peerage as to make sure they would not be caught in any blast of her destruction magic. The Occult Research Club president decided to take the initiative. Halt. Identify yourself. I am Rias of the Grimoire clan and I am the overseer of this town. Who are you and what is your business here? A familiar squeaky voice bounced out of the shadowed doorway. Me and Lizzie just wanted some ice cream. The comical and I'm-style sweat drop appeared over each head as Issei exited the abandoned house, with the eagle-sized red dragon emperor perched on his shoulder. Rias blinked. Issei? Why are you here? As I said, we wanted ice cream and while we were walking past here, we heard a female voice calling us for free ice cream in this old creepy abandoned house. Kaneko frowned. And you believed her? Issei shrugged. Who would turn down the chance at free ice cream? Few Kaneko Fassipum. Kiba continued the impromptu interrogation. And you fought the demon? Greg was the one to answer this time. Indeed, and we were quite upset that there wasn't any ice cream. Rias sighed heavily. And I suppose you dealt with her quite easily. What kind of attacks did she use? Issei smirked. 2 words. Nipple lasers. Akeno started to giggle. Nipple lasers. Greg did the dragon equivalent of a shrug. Interestingly enough, he's not lying about that. I knew the devils were freaky but that was just weird. Issei's eyes brightened. Wait, can you girls shoot lasers out of your nipples too? Ria's mouth fell open. Akeno looked down at her own breasts in honest curiosity. Kiba was trying his best not to think about it. And Kaneko? Kaneko was just staring right back at Issei. The staring contest continued for a few more seconds before Issei smiled and stooped down so he would be face to face with the white-haired loli. Well, I guess your lasers would be teeny-weeny huff. All eyes bugged out as Kaneko slammed her fist into Issei's face and sent him sailing back into the house. Strangely enough, Drake had hopped to Issei's shoulder a few moments before the punch and was not thrown violently into the house like his companion. An awkward silence fell upon the group before Drake spoke again. Under normal circumstances I would have killed you for that, child. But this time I let it slide. He deserved it. Kaneko bowed in thanks as Akeno tried to look into the house's shadows. Is he okay? The voice from inside the house echoed loudly. Oh www. My everything hurts and now I feel dizzy. Another awkward silence followed by which all assumed that Issei was unconscious. Greg sighed. The Fallen is going to blame me for this. Please excuse me as I go get my idiot. You all should go home as well. The Grimoire peerage simply nodded as Akeno prepared the transportation seal. Ria spoke up just as the magic circle flared to life. Red Dragon Emperor Sama. The green eyes beast paused mid-flight to answer the Grimoire clan heiress. Yes, child. Please let Issei know that I will have an answer for him by Monday. I am not a messenger beast, child. Each member of the Grimoire household physically recoiled by the small demonstration of power that Drake mixed with his voice. But on this occasion, I'll allow it. Now leave before you test my patience any further. With a quick flick of her wrist, Akeno activated the power of the seal, whisking her and the rest of the peerage away from the seemingly annoyed legendary dragon. Greg chuckled as he slowly flew back into the house. There was no greater joy than to have people fleeing your presence out of fear. He found Issei standing over the ashes of the demon that had identified herself as Visor. Was being punched the only way you could think of to get back in here? Issei smirked. It was the quickest. I wouldn't want Rias and company to see what I was up to in here. Thanks for chasing them away too. I'm sure they were going to pester me about the source of the golden light that they saw. It was my pleasure. What was the purpose of this experiment of yours? Issei looked back down at Visor's ashes and smiled. I'll explain it to you on the way to the ice cream shop. It seems I've been approaching our problem from the wrong angle this entire time. Tell me the truth. Are you absolutely sure I wasn't some kind of high-end prostitute? That actually seems far more believable than the whole I'm a fallen angel suffering from amnesia story. The clothes aren't that bad, Kalwerner. Kalwerner's head popped out from behind the door of a lavish bedroom closet. The blue-haired woman's gaze was directed at the raven-haired beauty that was sitting on the room's queen-sized bed. Have you seen my skirts? None of them even come close to covering my knees, not even one of them. Raynare rolled her eyes as her friend continued to search through her own closet, making snarky little comments at every article of clothing she saw. As I told you before, that was just a part of your style. Your clothes made a statement. While we were in heaven we were always told to stay all pure and modest. I think you chose your current wardrobe out of a rebellious inclination more than anything else. Kalwerner scoffed as she walked out of the closet, turning her interests to a stack of bills on her bedside table. I'm pretty sure I could have rebelled against God or heaven or whoever without giving everyone a free show. I must have been the ultimate sleazeball magnet. Raynare nodded. Indeed you were. It wasn't a completely bad thing though. Those so-called sleazeballs were oftentimes rich and well-connected. I'm quite sure you had put their various resources to proper use. Kalwerner looked away from the papers in her hands to stare at Raynare in disbelief. So let me get this straight. I have superhuman abilities, a gorgeous body and a wealth of mystical knowledge, but the career path that I chose was professional gold digger. Raynare thought about it for a few seconds. Well, sort of. Kalwerner groaned audibly. Raynare thought it wise to share just a few more details. You manage an information network that spans several parts of South America, Asia and Africa. You can't do that without having money and the right contacts. Believe me when I say that you are one of the Grigori's most important members. Kalwerner blushed a bit as a very large grin spread across her face. So basically I'm the James Bond of our organization. Raynare chuckled. No. I'm the James Bond of our organization. You're more like a sexier gold digger version of M. Kalwerner was pouting. Fuck you, I don't wanna be M. Oh my, what would your nun friend say if she found out her new friend had such a potty mouth? Kalwerner opened her mouth to respond, but didn't bother. Raynare could tell from the look on her friend's face that she was no longer in a joking mood. Kalwerner. Did any of missions ever involve me working directly against members of the Christian church? Raynare blinked in surprise, that question had not been expected. She decided to play it safe. Azazel Sama has no interest in picking any fights with heaven. Despite our differences we are currently in a non-aggression treaty that also covers the members of the various godly religions. On rare occasions we even find ourselves working alongside members of the church. Kalwerner seemed relieved. Raynare was now getting worried. Her answer wasn't the complete truth, but she couldn't trust Kalwerner didn't remember anything. Ah, that's good. Asia is a good person, not only because of what she's done, but I can tell that she genuinely cares about my well-being and the well-being of others. I only hope that I'll have the opportunity to pay her back for her kindness one day, even if I don't get to see her as often. Raynare bit her lip. There was absolutely no way in hell she could tell Kalwerner the truth about why Asia was in Kuo now. She could only hope that her restored memories would erase or at least supplant the feelings she now had for the blonde nun. The fallen angel spy was shaken from her train of thought as Kalwerner spoke. Speaking of Asia, are you sure she's safe with that insanely powerful pervert? Raynare blinked a few times before smirking. He's just escorting her to the church. As long as she doesn't do anything stupid like attack his porn, he won't have any reason to hurt her. Kalwerner shook her head even though she did plan to ask about the whole attacking his porn comment later. No, I don't mean like that. What if he takes advantage of the fact that she's crushing on him? Raynare snorted rather loudly. As much of a pervert the brat is, one of the first things I learned about him was that he doesn't force himself on his targets. According to Issei, the proper method is to charm, woo, and then said, did you just say that the nun is crushing on him? Kalwerner nodded slowly, as if Raynare was asking one of the dumbest questions ever. Of course she is. Did you not see the relief on her face when you two revealed to us that your relationship wasn't legit? She was practically glowing with hope. Poor love-struck little puppy. Raynare's eyebrows twitched, a phantom pain could be felt in the middle of her shoulder blades. An itch in the back of her mind begged to be scratched. She had allowed Issei and that girl to go off on their own together alone in the city. That blonde bimbo she had a crush on Issei. Her Issei? Suddenly the itch was gone, and Raynare now realized what she had just expressed to herself in the safety of her mind. My Issei, since when has he? I really need to destress or something, my brain's flipping out. I mean Raynare, you could. Raynare nodded her head even though a tsunami of questions and thoughts swept across her mind without hesitation. I'm fine. So bringing you here was a complete bust, huh? I was hoping you'd remember something by seeing one of your apartments. Raynare shrugged. Well, I wouldn't say it was a complete bust. Raynare's eyes widened as Raynare flashed several high-quality debit cards that she had more than likely found in the apartment. How about we go on a shopping spree and get me some decent clothes and a few other basic necessities? Raynare's grin spread far and wide as she stood. Despite the fact that Raynare didn't remember much, she was sure that her friend was still in there, somewhere, waiting to wake up. Ah. Issei-kun. Yay, Asia. This is it. Yup. Are you sure? I've lived in this city for all of my life, there's only one Christian church around, and this is it. Asia nodded as she turned her focus back onto the building in front of her. Yes, but this place is deserted. In need of great repair. Locked up. Yes, all of those. Issei watched with natural curiosity as Asia attempted to make sense of what was in front of her. It was rather obvious to him that the building had not been in use by the church for some time. There was no why people would try to worship an omnipotent god in such a crappy building, right? The few Christians that might have lived in Kuo probably went to another Kolsake town for worship. His eyes narrowed as he caught sight of an angelic statue right near the entrance. The stone figure did show obvious signs of natural decay, but Issei could also recognize intentional acts of vandalism that had been carried out on the statue. The citizens of Kuo were rather suspicious and spiritual people, he never heard stories of them disrespecting other religions and/or gods. The cuts on the statue were also a little too smooth to be done by an ordinary human. It could have been the work of a devil. It would make sense, disfiguring a statue that represented the exact opposite of what the devil community stood for. But there was still something about this that seemed rather weird. He just couldn't put his finger on it. Asia still seemed rather troubled by the development, so he chimed in with a suggestion. Well, can't you just reach out to your superiors and find out if there was some kind of mistake? Asia thought about the idea for a few seconds before lowering her gaze. As far as Issei could see, it was almost as if she was reliving a horrible memory. It wouldn't be as easy as that for me. It would take some time to reach the right people. Asia didn't seem to want to share any more, and her brown-haired companion had no intention to push the issue. Well, that's fine. Knowing my mom, she'd probably tell you to stay with us until you have your business sorted out. Asia smiled sweetly. Your family has been infinitely kind to me, Issei-kun. God bless all of you. I'm going to do my best to help around the house so as not to be too much of a burden. Issei scratched the back of his head. Think nothing of it. My parents are just like may also be enjoying teaching you and Cleopatra about the finer arts of being a proper housewife a little too much. Asia giggled. Raynare, Issei. Her name is Raynare. Isn't that what I said? Asia giggled again before sparing one last look at the church. I suppose we should get back. I hope Raynare-chan and Raynare have been more successful than us in their endeavors. Issei scratched his chin as he walked side by side with the blonde sacred gear user. Raynare is just taking her to a few spots that might jog her memory a bit. It's not a foolproof plan, but we might as well do something while we wait for whoever's bringing that cure. Asia nodded in understanding. I wonder what kind of person the real Raynare is. Issei was just about to pass a sarcastic remark when a rather troubling sound interrupted his train of thought. Brewer. Issei blinked as he looked over at a heavily blushing Asia. The green-eyed beauty scratched her cheek. I guess skipping breakfast was a bad idea. Issei smirked before speaking. Well, we're in no real rush, let me take you to the best burger joint in Kuo. Trust me, the milkshakes are so thick you have to go through them with a spoon. Asia titled her head in natural curiosity as she spoke. What is a burger and a milkshake? Issei's visage suddenly darkened as his hand slowly rested on Asia's head. Asia, I now know why your god has brought me into your life. Asia's eyes widened. Really? A single tear ran down Issei's left cheek. Yes, my purpose on this planet is so I could have opened a beautiful young lady's eyes to the guilty pleasures known as junk food. Onward. We must not wait another second. Asia barely managed a shout of surprise as Issei grabbed her hand and took off at Mach speed, heading straight into the city center. Under normal circumstances, the young nun would have begged Issei to slow down or at least allow her to walk under her own power, but her mind was too busy replaying a few choice words that had slipped from her companion's lips. A beautiful young lady. Beautiful. Issei-kun thinks I'm beautiful. On that day, the citizens of Kuo could not decide what was the stranger sight. The brown-haired maniac that ran through town screaming about burgers, pizza and level 7 food-related emergency, or the blushing nun that was being dragged along by him that seemed to be caught up in her own little world. It was definitely the brown-haired kid. Monday morning. Morning, Raynare-chan, I must say you're looking rather ravishing in my school's uniform. Bite me. Only if you moan and beg. Raynare rolled her eyes as she tried to look anywhere but at Issei's face. She knew that a perverted grin would be literally carved into his features right now. Take your eyes off me or I rip them out of your skull. Consequences be damned. That applies to the rest of the time I'll have to spend at your crappy school too. Issei narrowed his eyes at Raynare as they made their way to Kuo Academy. You seem rather upset, Rere-chan. You alright? Raynare exhaled. Just a bad hangover. Issei nodded. Ah. I'll have the nurse or bet yet I'll ask Akeno-senpai to make you a cup of tea. Raynare shook her head. I'll be fine. That was not the truth. The problem started when Raynare and Kalawiner returned to the Hyoudou residence yesterday evening. They were just in time to witness Issei and Asia cooking dinner together as Issei's mother had not come home yet. The pair of Issei and Asia seemed so bubbly, connected and happy that it annoyed Raynare to no end. Even Kalawiner had openly commented on the duo's uncanny synergy, which was enough to draw a blush from Asia and a grin from a rather pleased Issei. That fucking little perv, what was he grinning about, huh? The chumminess between them was just a little too much to handle, and Raynare quickly excused herself from their company and ended the night having drunk sex with the most handsome guy she could find at her favorite bar. That did not help the situation. It only made her feel even more annoyed. And she just couldn't figure out why. But whenever her mind replayed any image of Issei and Asia together, that itch in the back of her mind grew in strength. Oh, I forgot to mention that something happened yesterday. Raynare narrowed her eyes at her ward. What do you mean when you say something happened? Yesterday while me and Asia were on our way home, I could definitely sense that someone was watching us. The Grimmery clan again? No, this was different. I can't tell you much more, but the individual definitely chose to keep their distance. When I felt like they were getting too close, I asked Lizzie to distract them with his kai so we could get away. I was not interested in starting a superpowered magic fight in public. Raynare nodded. I see. I'll look into it. Speaking of people that are watching you. Issei instantly directed his gaze towards the school gate that he and Raynare were now facing. The president and vice president of the occult research was standing at the gate, the both of them passing on polite greetings and words to all those that had recognized them. Issei and Raynare approached them slowly. As they did, the entire crowd around the famous group parted and entered into the academy's grounds. No other students seemed interested in greeting them again either. It was obviously the use of magic. Issei whistled as he watched the disinterested students walk past them. I really have to learn how to do that. Good morning, ladies. Ria stepped forward. Good morning, Issei-kun, and welcome to Kuo Academy. Raynare, or is it be Amano-yuma? Raynare nodded. You're correct, Ria-san. Amano-yuma will be my name while I'm here. Ria smiled. Good, the student council president also looks forward to greeting you when the time is right. Issei smirked. That's great, but I'm sure you didn't wait on us at the school gate just to tell us that. Ria smiled approvingly. Indeed. I am here to let you know that I'm accepting your offer. Of course you are. It is the wisest decision. Issei pulled out a small slip of paper out of his top pocket. This is for you. Akeno smirked as she narrowed her eyes. A love letter from an underclassman. I didn't know you were so brave, Issei-kun. Issei chuckled. It's no love letter, it's a list of books I'm hoping to have made available to me in the next week. Just making sure you fulfill your part of the bargain. Ria's pocketed the list. Of course. The Occult Research Club begins at 4 p.m. each evening. I expect you to be there promptly. I look forward to a profitable experience working with you. Issei smirked. A very profitable experience indeed. Undisclosed location. Middle narrowed her eyes as she reread the message that she had just received on her newly bought phone. The mad exorcist that they had left behind in Kuo had spotted Asia in broad daylight and had failed to grab her. The reason behind that was still not clearly explained. Among the several lines of profanity and blasphemous claims, Selzen stated several times that he started to feel nauseous and disoriented every time he came too close to Asia and the young man accompanying her. That didn't make any sense. It was more than likely some sort of illusion magic that had caught the excommunicated priest off guard. In her response, she warned him to be careful and more vigilant, as Asia was key to the success of their first sacred gear removal attempt. Whoever was accompanying Asia would more than likely have to be removed from the situation. She needed to get into contact with Raynare again to see what she had found out on her end. The blonde fallen angel slipped her phone into her pocket as she went downstairs to share the new information with Donasik. The fedora-wearing member of the Grigori had managed to assemble a team who had worked assiduously to figure out the ancient relic's limits. They could not afford any mistakes or accidents. The hallway leading to Issei's class. Say that again. Issei smiled. I'm saying that you don't have to pretend you're my girlfriend while you're here at Kuo. Raynare folded her arms as she tried to get a proper read on the perverted smile that seemed super glued to Issei's face. And what exactly caused this change of heart? You were insistent on this just a few days ago. Issei scratched the back of his head, a small blush adding color to his cheeks. Well, I am well. Raynare growled. Talk. Now. Issei reacted out of fear more than anything else as his sentence came out as one combined word. Erstendingen moafjutinga threesome. Repeat that. But slower. You're the only thing standing in between me and a threesome. Raynare blinked. How? Issei perked up. Well, there's this kendo club at school that me, Mitsuda and Motohama always spy on while they're changing. Raynare was growling again. Issei. Wait. Let me tell the full story. Those girls wanted us to spy on them. Have you finally watched enough cheap porn that it's rotted your brain? Hey, my porn isn't cheap. That's not the point, Issei. I think it is. No, the point is you claim that these girls wanted you to spy on them, an entire kendo club full of females. Issei scratched his chin. Okay, maybe not all of them. But most of them. How did you come to that stupid conclusion? Easy. Every time the girls caught us, they would beat us up but never report us to the higher authorities to get us suspended or expelled. They punished us but never took it too seriously. That doesn't. Also, 2 months ago they had a fundraiser to improve the club's facilities and got a whole new set of changing rooms but still decide to change in the older room where they could be seen from. That still doesn't. In addition, when someone from the student council suggested to the girls that they could tear down the wooden fence that provided me and my friends a peephole and replace it with a higher concrete wall, the girls utterly rejected the idea without explaining themselves. So maybe. And then a few days ago, I challenged the top brass of the kendo club to an all-or-nothing match. If I won, they would admit to their perverted desires and allow the 3 of us to join the kendo club. If we lost, we would be their servants for the rest of our tenure at Kuo. And you won? Issei puffed out his chest. Of course I did. And just as I thought, a lot of those girls were overly frustrated exhibitionists who just wanted a little attention. This school is insane. Indeed, that's why we love it. That still doesn't explain why you might be getting a threesome. Based on what I've been observing, there's something up with the 2 girls in my class who are leaders of the kendo club. I think losing to me was a big turn-on for them. Raynare face palmed. We're all Japanese human teenagers, just horny little gremlins. Issei continued. Anyways, here's the thing. There is one thing that Kuo girls do not do is mess around with someone who is taken. If it is confirmed that a guy is off the market, all of their interest is directed somewhere else. It's a rather weird phenomenon. Raynare nodded. I see. Issei smiled. Good. The perverted trio will finally be victorious. Raynare facepalmed again. That's what you call yourselves? They called us that and we just ran with it. Of course. Right. Anyways, the teacher is here, so time for your big introduction. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Good morning, class. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Yuma Mano. She will be a member of this class from now on. She's transferring from one of our sister schools in the south. Please let her feel welcome. Is there anything you want to say, Yuma? Raynare stopped forward, enjoying the looks, the hushed whispers, and the not-so-hushed exclamations of how beautiful she really was. She did appreciate the compliments even though it was merely a portion of her true beauty. She begun her introduction. Hello, my name is Yuma Mano. I'm new to this area, so please take care of me and I. And then in that moment she saw him. Issei was just sitting there, smiling at her. And her mind diverted for a split second. In that moment she realized she had an opportunity to sever the possible ties between Issei and the girls of Kuo. Raynare didn't realize that this was her green-eyed emotion known as jealousy speaking. She couldn't identify the smooth silky voice that had proposed such a plan. She already had to deal with Asia. She had no intention of allowing this. Issei would not have his threesome. Issei would not have any girl here. She would make sure of that. Raynare smiled and Issei felt a cold, terrible breeze encircle him. The wielder of the boosted gear could only watch in horror as the smiling raven-haired witch put an end to his hopes and ambitions. I am the fiancé of Issei Hyoudou. The teacher fell backwards. What? The girls jumped up from their seats. Hiya. The boys gave Issei the dirtiest looks they could muster, while Mitsuda and Motohama started to call him a traitor to the perverted way. Issei sat there quietly looking into the eyes of the woman that betrayed him. You little bitch. End of the part 2. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.